Hello again, Frank here with another Fantasy Grounds Unity Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition player character creation tutorial. That is a mouthful. And this is the last one. It might go a little long, as we're going to get into the Actions tab, and this can get a little hefty. For the purposes of this video, I'm only going to stick with Nuber the Fighter here, but I will make another video later covering down more on powers and some more intermediate combat information when it comes to spells and abilities and such. So let's get into this. So last time we talked about notes. I'm going to click on the Action tab now, and you can see that as we get here, right off the bat, we see the longsword and the short bow. And those are there because we added them into our inventory. You don't need to manually type anything in there. They're already added. And you'll also notice that it adds all kinds of other information, attack bonuses that we have, strength bonuses, and that's all based off our strength. You can see that we have a +6 damage adjustment, and then from our skills, we specialize in longsword, which gives us another +2 to our damage, and we are obviously proficient in that longsword. We go back to the Actions tab and you can see that that +8 is already there. So you don't need to come in here and adjust any of this. It's already taken care of. The only time you're going to want to mess with any of this is if maybe you have some other bonuses. For instance, if we were an elf, they get a +1 bonus to your swords or what have you. So you may put that in here, but you could also put that in the proficiencies area and just add it in. I would caution you not to really put that type of information over here, however, because Fantasy Grounds is going to assume that you are proficient. And I get in this debate a lot with players. They see that when they put an elf, it'll put sword here, and they think that they are proficient. That is not the case. You must still be proficient. So I would highly recommend for situational bonuses like that, you just go ahead and edit it here. Okay, so let's get into this. There are several things here. There's the attack matrix, or Thaco matrix, excuse me. You will not really need to worry about this too much. Back in the day, this might have been a useful chart, but since everything in Fantasy Grounds is handled for you, math-wise, there's really nothing you need to worry about. It's going to tell you whether you hit or miss. And the DM will further elaborate on that if there's any kind of situational modifiers or what have you that you're not seeing in the chat box or maybe just don't know about. So you can adjust the name here if you want to. You can change the attack type, and you can double click these boxes to do various things. Click on the shield on the right here, it'll bring up the weapon so you can see the information on that weapon. We'll just start from left to right. Don't worry too much about this little guy here. It doesn't really do anything at least for this tab. What you do need to know about is this yellow box here is for initiative. You'll also notice that there are some boxes up here. You can roll from surprise here. You can also do that from the main tab. You can roll for initiative. That's similar to the initiative tab here. And you can delay your turn. You notice that on this character, there is no turn button because we are not a cleric. Now, if we were a cleric, and I'm just going to edit this. Oh, excuse me, I cannot do it there. If your DM determined that for whatever reason you were able to turn, they would add that ability onto your character sheet for you in the combat section here, which I have done off screen since I have the DM's options available. So you see I added turn undead, and you cannot, oh, you can adjust this. I lied. You learn something new every day. All right, so now that there is a 1 there, if we go to the Action tab, you see that the turn button showed up. Now this is a clickable option. Now that we're past that, if you double click on initiative, it is going to roll initiative for you. It's going to add whatever your weapon speed is. In ADnD2e, the higher your weapon speed, the slower your weapon. you want a lower number so that you go first in the turn order. That is how second edition works. And in second edition, you roll, typically by the rules, you roll initiative every single round for every single action you want to do. So the DM will usually start off with asking all the players at a table. Obviously, most don't do that in Fantasy Grounds because it's all automated. But he may go around the table and ask each player what their action is, and then tell them, okay, you want to attack with your longsword? Go ahead and roll initiative for your longsword. And he would tally up all the results and just go down by the order. One thing we also need to talk about, which I'll get into more depth later, which is the combat tracker. So if we go to the menus option up here at the top left, and we scroll down to where it says combat tracker, you'll see that our combat tracker is blank because the DM has not added us to the combat tracker yet. So off screen here, I'm going to go ahead and add Nuber the fighter to the combat tracker. You'll see that he showed up. There's Nuber. Got some information based off of how detailed the DM wants our combat tracker to be, which he sets up in the options. You can see that we have this little boot with a wing on it, which is the effects button. You can look at your various effects that you currently have, and these effects were placed on our combat tracker based off of the abilities tab. These are advanced effects based off our race. So now you see where those came into play. Now, the DM will typically in round one say, I want everyone to go ahead and roll initiative. And in this case, we're going to go ahead and do so with the longsword. Roll initiative, and you see that our initiative shows up here in the order. Now, just for the sake of this, I'm going to go ahead and add a creature to the combat. Bear with me for a moment while I load the monsters manual on the DM side. And this can take long. If you are a DM and you are loading a rather large module, just be patient. Don't go clicking around. Let the module load, and then you can add stuff. Also, just be patient. Know that the DM is getting a lot of updates as you're moving tokens around, as you're clicking things on your character sheet. Anytime you're typing things in or moving stuff around on your sheet, it is updating information on the Dungeon Master's side or the host side. And that can put strain on his host, which inevitably is going to put strain on all the clients. So just try not to be very clicky or updating too much stuff all at once. Just let the Fantasy Grounds do its thing. All right, so we have loaded finally. And I will now add, I think an orc will be a great choice. And once the DM makes the orc visible, you will see it show up in the combat tracker with whatever information he has allowed. In this case, his orc has rolled a 13 for initiative, so goes after Nuber. So now we want to make an attack roll. Now, if there was a map with tokens, we could use the map to target and make attack rolls. But for the purposes of this, we're going to kind of base this more off a theater of the mind type deal and just use the combat tracker. I'm going to close the item window here. And there's several things we can do here. So the DM is going to go down the turn order here. And you should see in the chat log when it's your turn. Nuber fighter. Your turn. You will also see in the combat tracker, there's a golden arrow pointing at you. Big border. So we now know it's Nuber's turn. DM will probably tell you as well. Nuber, your turn. What do you want to do? Now in the chat log it told the DM that we were rolling initiative for the longsword, but I can tell you right now, when you have a lot of players, this chat log is going to get filled up real quick, so he's probably just going to ask you, just tell him. Uber, in this case, wants to fight this orc. So there's a couple ways we can do this. We can hold control and click on the orc. You can see that it says targets orc. Once we do that, we can double click on the red box, which is roll an attack using the listed weapon. I'm going to go ahead and do that. You can see that it's going to roll. It's going to target the orc, and it'll tell us what we hit. So in this case, we got a hit. We hit an AC of 1 versus the orc's 6. Now we want to roll for damage. We have two options here. You hover over them. In 2nd edition, some weapons do more damage to large creatures. So in this case, where the L is, stands for large. Well, an orc is not large. When in doubt, ask your DM, he will tell you if a creature is large or not. But in this case, it is not large, so we're going to go ahead and just double click on the 1d8 to do some damage to this orc. We did 2 points of damage, plus 8, bringing it to 10, which has outright killed this orc. Bad day for the orc. It is now dead. Now, let's say that didn't happen yet. Let's say that we want to attack the orc, but we don't like to control click for whatever reason. Another option you can do is simply to left click and hold on the red box. When you drag away, you'll see that you have the dice in your hand, and you can just drop that right on top of the orc in the combat tracker. You'll get a one-time target. Light blue with an M, we missed. In an arm class 8, we needed to hit a 6. So, unfortunately, we did not hit. Another thing we could do is with the damage. Same thing. We didn't target, we can right click and hold, or excuse me, left click and hold, and drag and drop. And it will do the damage to the orc. Again, we have exceeded the damage that the orc can take. Notice this is it is dying. Delete that. It's still healthy. One other thing to note is if you forget to target your creature. Let's say we got overzealous and we just double clicked without targeting or dragging. It's going to tell us we made an attack roll and we hit an armor class of 4. The DM can see that. He may ask you what you attacked, but another thing you can do is you can just grab this dice down here and you can drag it. See how I have a little sword icon? Very transparent. You can drag that all the way over to the target we actually wanted, drop it, and it will tell you, oh, you did hit that specific orc, and it will tell the DM. The DM can also do this for you, but I typically like to do it for them so that they know what my initial target was. Targeting in Fantasy Ground Unity can sometimes get a little weird, especially with the tokens, so this is a nice feature to have. Same thing goes with the damage. If you were to roll damage without targeting, we see we did 12 points of damage. We can drag that. See, it's got a little blood tier showing it damage that we're about to drop, and we drop that right on the orc, and same thing. Tells us that we exceeded the amount of hit points the orc can sustain. Now, let's get into ammunition. The short bow has 0 because we didn't buy any arrows, but even if we had, it's not going to update from the inventory tab. Ammunition, you need to update that yourself. So I'm just going to put in that we have 20 arrows. You see that there's a lot of bubbles here, helps keep track. We do not need to update these manually. As you make attack rolls, you will notice they are getting checked off. You can check them off yourself and uncheck them as you recover ammunition. I'm just going to check all the way so you can see what happens when you try to make an attack roll when your arrows are all consumed. You can see attacking while out of ammo. This just keys the DM in that you didn't have ammunition. He may ask you, maybe you forgot to uncheck them, who knows. but it's just a nice little tooltip for the DM and the player. Another useful feature here, if you're familiar with longbows can fire both flight and sheath arrows. Just pretend that this is a longbow that we have now. Instead of going in here every single time and updating this or creating a whole new weapon or what have you, you can right click on the short bow. You can go to clone item. I'm going to create an exact copy of however you have it set up. And here I want to put sheath arrow. Now I'm going to go to the gear here and open the sheath arrow. And sheath arrows do 1d8 points of damage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the die here and click the little eraser that's going to clear out the dice. And then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to grab the d8, drag and drop it in the little dice box. You can see it added a d8. That's just a quick little way to add a different type of ammunition. And obviously, if you don't have 20 arrows, you got 10 sheath arrows. Even though typically you're not supposed to be able to fire sheath arrows from a short bow, just using this as an example for how that works. And that is pretty much going to cover it for the Actions tab. There is a Powers tab up here as well, but I will save that for another time, maybe when we talk about spells and how to create a cleric or a wizard. But thank you for watching, and see you next time.